Jane had always been the life of the party. She was cheerful and bubbly, and everyone loved her. So when she brought home a homeless man, Tom, her friends and family were shocked. They laughed behind her back, wondering what she could possibly see in him. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Jane's parents were shocked, to say the least, when a wedding invitation showed up on their doorstep. It was from their youngest daughter, Jane, who had been living in another state for the past 3 years or so. They excitedly called Jane to let her know they were coming and expressed how happy they were for her and her soon-to-be husband, Tom. As the wedding day approached, Jane's parents packed their bags and flew to their daughter. As they settled into their seats on the plane, they couldn't help but gush about how beautiful the wedding was going to be, and how happy they were for Jane. Once they arrived at Jane and Tom's home, they were greeted by Jane and Tom, who, although seemingly nervous, appeared just to be as eager to meet them. They asked Tom about his job and about his life before Jane. As soon as they noticed him struggling with the answers, they knew something was up. He had been dreading this moment since he first met Jane's parents. They were a tight-knit family, and he knew how important their approval was to her. "I was living on the streets when I met Jane," he eventually said. Jane could see the disgusted look on her parents' faces as Tom's words sunk in. "You are homeless?" her mother asked with the worst, most judgmental tone possible. "Yes, I was, but now I live with Jane as we're getting married." Luckily, their conversation got interrupted as they arrived at the house, but Jane knew the rest of her parents' stay would be nothing but horrible. Every moment she had alone with her mother, she did her best to talk her out of marrying Tom, but nothing worked. Months passed, and Jane and Tom were enjoying their married life. Tom had moved into Jane's house, as he had none of his own, and Jane was trying to help him find a job. Suddenly, Jane got a text message from her mother, who she hadn't spoken to since she had sent them away. "Dear Jane, since you made it so clear to me you didn't want to be a part of our family anymore, we have taken you out of our will. You have made your choice to marry a homeless man, many years older than you. We, your father and I, don't support your decision and are afraid he is only using you to get to our money." Jane couldn't believe it. Tears streamed down her face by the time she was done reading, and she couldn't be calmed down no matter how hard Tom tried. Jane had a very good reason to marry Tom, but since her parents had decided to cut her off, she decided they would never know the truth. She needed months to recover from her heartbreak, and it put a strain on her marriage. Luckily, their love was stronger, and they made it through. But what Jane didn't know was that her father actually had nothing to do with the hurtful text. For all that time, he thought Jane was the one who never wanted to speak to them again. But, being the loving and protective father he was, he decided he didn't want to let her go. So, he hired a private detective. He ordered the private detective to stake out her place and report back if something out of the ordinary happened. Jane and Tom had no idea they were being watched, so they continued with their daily lives. Years passed, and Jane fell pregnant. Jane's father found out about the happy news through the private detective he still had staking out their place. It was the final straw. He wanted to be in his grandchild's life. He found a text too impersonal, so he decided to write her a letter and send it to her together with a bouquet of flowers and a little teddy bear. The letter read, "My darling Jane, please forgive me for whatever I have done to you to push you so far away." The letter continued, "We haven't spoken in a very long time, and throughout all those years, I have thought about you and missed you every single day. I hope you can ever forgive me, and that I can be a part of your growing family's life. Love, Dad." Jane was very confused after reading the letter. She couldn't understand why he would act so clueless about why they hadn't talked in so long. Didn't he expect this to happen after cutting her off? She decided to meet up with her father to hear him out. They agreed to meet at a cafe because Jane wasn't ready to let him into her house just yet. When she saw her father after all those years, her heart sank a little. He looked so much older, and she suddenly realized how much she had missed. They hugged each other and sat down, both with tears in their eyes. "Jane, her father began, but Jane interrupted him. She suddenly had a feeling she had to speak on. "Dad, did you know about the text?" She watched as her father frowned. "What are you talking about?" Anger boiled up inside her as she realized her mother had lied to her. She explained everything to her father, who looked at her with sorrow. He was clearly hurt by what his wife had done to him. All this time, she had been the one who had pushed Jane away, and he never knew. They spent the whole day talking to each other, filling each other in on every little thing they had missed. When Jane was on her way home after spending the day with her father, she felt a mix of emotions. Tom immediately sensed Jane's anger when she got home, so she told him everything. "You have to tell them the truth, Jane," he said, knowing it would bring her family together again. "She doesn't deserve to know," Jane answered. "She didn't only ruin her own relationship with me, but she ruined the relationship between me and my father as well." Suddenly, she had no idea who her mother was anymore. She had changed from a loving mother to an evil mother you would only read about in books. That night, she texted her father to meet her at her house the following day. Her father replied within minutes and told her he would be there, but that he was curious and a bit nervous as to why she wanted to meet again so soon. The next day, her father showed up at her doorstep, but he wasn't alone. He had brought Jane's mother, or she had probably insisted on coming as well. "Jane, I know it's hard, but family is complicated. Sometimes we need to look past the pain to find understanding." Noticing the mounting strain, Jane's father led her to the balcony. "Jane, I know this is hard, but she's your mother. You two used to be inseparable." Tears welled in Jane's eyes. "That was a long time ago, Dad." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Time heals, my dear. Please, for the sake of our family, try to mend this bridge." She nodded, uncertainty clear in her eyes. As her father's words sank in, she couldn't help but wonder if their relationship could ever be repaired. The tension in the air was palpable as Jane's mother sat stone-faced, processing her daughter's words. Sitting close together, Jane and Tom exchanged glances before Tom began. "We met on a cold night, right by the park." Jane nodded. "I was coming home from work, and something about him just drew me in." Tom's eyes sparkled. "I had my own business, a tech startup. I was surrounded by innovation, energy, and yes, wealth." Jane smiled. "People looked up to him, respected him. He was someone I would have heard about, even if we hadn't met that night." This was turning out to be a really intriguing story. Tom's voice grew more animated. "There was a time when my days looked different. I was an entrepreneur, having started a successful tech firm from scratch. I was celebrated, interviewed, and admired. The city knew my name. Parties, events, accolades. Life was a dream." Jane smiled, adding, "In college, we all knew of Tom, the genius entrepreneur. Our meeting felt like a twist of fate." Jane's mother sat, her expression softening with every passing moment. The narrative before her was challenging every preconceived notion she held about Tom. How could I have misjudged so much? She wondered silently. With every new detail revealed, her protective walls began to crumble, replaced with a growing admiration and regret. Tom cleared his throat, breaking the thick silence. "My success was swift, but the fall was even swifter. My judgments became clouded, and I took risks I shouldn't have. I trusted people, believing in their promises, only to be backstabbed." Jane's voice held firm as she began. "When I met Tom, it wasn't his situation that drew me in. It was the strength in his eyes, the wisdom in his words, the heart that had endured so much. Pity? As we built a life together, Tom's wounds slowly faded and were replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and joy." Jane's parents, clearly overwhelmed by the revelations, found their voice. "How could we have been so blind, so judgmental?" her father lamented. Her mother, tears streaming down, added, "Tom, from the bottom of my heart, I apologize. We were wrong. All this while, we failed to see the true strength and character in front of us." As days turned into weeks, The house echoed with sounds of healing. There were candid conversations, shared meals, and laughter. Jane, Tom, and her parents began weaving a tapestry of trust and understanding. As they opened up to each other and shared stories, they realized they had more in common than they thought. The house was filled with warmth and love that had been absent for too long, and with that, they embarked on a journey of healing, ready to rebuild their relationships and mend the broken trust. It wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to make it work. The story concluded with a message of hope, emphasizing that love can overcome the greatest obstacles, and second chances can indeed change lives.